Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we are now entering day 40 of the ongoing war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. And before I start today's coverage, just a quick shout out. I appreciate Robert Barnes, the attorney Robert Barnes, made a quick shout out on the Viva Free, the David Freeheight Show YouTube channel, and during one of the latest episodes, or the latest episode, Robert had mentioned Military and Foreign Affairs Network, and it appears that he watches the channel. So appreciate it, and again, we'll continue to try and do the best work we can in terms of unbiased coverage of the ongoing conflict. But jumping into again to day 40, we continue to see the fighting continue. We are right now witnessing what would be defined as the final withdrawal of Russian forces from the northern sector of operations. That is the area both to the northwest, over here where my cursor is circling, to the west side of the Dnieper River, and obviously to the east side of the Dnieper River as well. So the furthest extent of the Russian operation was within the vicinity of Brovary. We have since seen those Russian forces withdraw back north, obviously, to Chernihiv, and then again now east of Konotop. So that very precarious salient that we have observed the Russian forces operating in, and again, I talked about that in the previous video, that ran from basically the outskirts of Brovary to the east, and again put the Russian forces in a fairly precarious situation. Again, the only need for that bulge or salient by the Russian forces extending all the way to Kiev, or just to the outskirts of Kiev, again, was directed at a Russian operation towards Kiev. So again, the Russians have had the ability to withdraw a fairly sizable component of Russian forces out of this area of operation. So we would estimate anywhere from 27 to quite possibly upwards to 40 Russian battalion tactical groups have been relieved of having to operate in this area, in the northern sector of operations, again from the northwest of Sumy all the way on to the west side of the Dnieper River. And it would appear that the Russians are again moving a lot of these forces. They could be repositioning these forces again on an operational area of advance extending from Kharkiv all the way down towards southeast of Donetsk. But again, a lot of these forces are and most likely are going to have to be reconstructed and repaired, as some of these forces have indeed suffered significant damage in the ensuing operation in that northern area of operation. So we continue to hear about the Russians preparing again for ongoing operations specifically directed towards and the eastern separatist areas, and again that extends from Donetsk all the way north towards Izium. And that's that town right here, as you can clearly see, that has been recently captured by the Russian military. And again, it appears that we are looking at a multi-pronged operation, really designed at this point with the focus on capturing Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. And obviously the Russians right now are in heated battles, both urban and rural battles near Severodonetsk, and will probably be in very, very heated and heavy fighting for this city. Again, a relatively large town, both with massive Soviet-era apartment blocks and some industrial areas as well. Compounding that, obviously, you have the Donetsk River that kind of separates the Severodonetsk from the other urban area just to the southwest of this area of operation. So, again, probably a lot of the same types of fighting that we are currently seeing in Mariupol will probably, in all likelihood, occur in many of these towns in what could become a very precarious pocket for the Ukrainian military. And again, a lot of these areas prior to the current war that is taking place have been built up and fortified by the Ukrainian military. We continue to see components of some of these nationalist irregular forces that are now more or less regular forces and a component of both the Ukrainian military and obviously the Ukrainian National Guard. There are a host of Ukrainian, again, National Guard, territorial defense militias, and then obviously regular Ukrainian military. Some of their better units currently operating within the confines of the kind of the southeast area of operations. But again, it would appear that the Russians are maneuvering in force and look to conduct a major operation, again, to kind of push these front lines out, quite possibly all the way towards the Dnieper River. Now, obviously, we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, but the initial stages of this operation, what we would define as, I guess, the Russian version of stage 2 of this operation, would be directed towards Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. And that is going to be a key objective for the Russian forces as this war continues. Obviously, the Russian forces continue to interdict and attempt to degrade and destroy Ukrainian military capability all throughout Ukraine. And we continue to see Russian forces target oil and petroleum installations, fuel depots, ammo depots, and again, something they haven't been as successful in the last few weeks, and it's something that they should probably become more successful at, and that is, again, as we talked about in prior episodes, the interdiction of Ukrainian motorized and tank units that are moving throughout the country at their leisure. So again, I would say at this point, the Russian military would get maybe a grade D, grade C in terms of their capability to interdict Ukrainian forces maneuvering around the country while this Russian offensive is taking place. And that is something that the Russians are going to really increase their skill set and probably are looking to do that as we speak, as again, we continue to see the Ukrainian forces maneuver around the Ukraine at its leisure. At the same time, you have to look at the Russian Air Force in terms of its capability, both current and going into this conflict. We believed, and most military analysts believe, that the Russian military would do a decent job of having the ability to interdict these Ukrainian forces maneuvering around the country. And again, we've seen that has been a difficult lesson for the Russian military in terms of being able to actually conduct real interdiction missions against maneuvering Ukrainian forces, again, around the state of Ukraine. But again, in the north, we are seeing that the Ukrainians are retaking control of a lot of those areas, again, to the north and northwest of Kiev that were once under the control of the Russian military. And we anticipate that we will see an uptick in operations again in the eastern separatist areas, in the area running from Kharkiv down towards Mariupol and even to the southwest of those locales as well. I think it's going to be incredibly pivotal for the Russian military to eventually circumvent and seal off Kharkiv. Now, whether they're able to do that or not, again, it's a different story. We'll see if they're actually able to do that. It's going to be a very, very challenging operation, but I think at some point for the Russians to come to a political solution or force the Ukrainian state to the table in which the Russians can position itself from an area of strength, the Russians are going to have to probably either take or envelop Kharkiv. Additionally, obviously, the Russians are going to have to continue operations and achieve some victories, again, near Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. But again, this is going to be a very long and tedious fight for both parties as the war continues. In other news, we continue to hear about Ukraine now asking for, again, obviously they're asking for fighter aircraft, but now they're also asking for main battle tanks and armored infantry fighting vehicles. And it sounds like the North Atlantic Treaty Organization could be positioning itself, specifically Poland, who does have the capability to both produce and upgrade and repair T-72 main battle tanks, could be in a position to hand over some of its both upgraded and its T-72 era main battle tanks that are in store in Poland and hand those over to Kiev. So why would the Ukrainians look to obtain more main battle tanks? I mean, we've heard these reports that allegedly the Ukrainians now have more main battle tanks in terms of T-72s, T-64, T-80s, T-90s that have been captured by Russian forces, that have either been damaged or left on the battlefield after initial contact. So we do know the Ukrainians have captured some Russian assets. Now, is it to the point where the Ukrainians now have actually more main battle tanks now than when they first started the conflict? We've heard that several times from some media outlets, and then obviously the Ukrainian state itself. I would say that is highly doubtful. Again, the Russians have been conducting a very sizable air campaign through the course of this conflict over the last 40 days. We have seen the nonstop use of Russian helicopter gunships and other assets, obviously ground assets as well, targeting those Ukrainian assets, meaning main battle tanks. So the likelihood that Ukraine now has more main battle tanks than prior to the start of the conflict, I think is just kind of erroneous, and it isn't really worth mentioning. I would say that, so, and at the same time, then why would they be looking to obtain more main battle tanks from Poland? Obviously, it takes time and training to train a tanker and a tank crew in the use of whatever era main battle tank they would be using, be it from Poland, Germany, Romania, whomever. Again, you're going to need a significant amount of training before you have an effective tank unit. And again, tanks don't operate by themselves. They operate in larger formations with other tanks and other infantry, and again, that takes training and know-how, and it's just something that is going to take some time if if Poland and NATO, the United States, were to start delivering some of these main battle tanks to Ukraine. Now, will that escalate things? Will the Russians see this as a escalation? Quite possibly. Again, if you are the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and you are constantly providing ammunition, munitions, weapons, anti-tank guided weapon systems, man-portable anti-aircraft systems, and now main battle tanks, possibly aircraft, drones, I mean, you have directly intervened in this conflict, and quite honestly, at this point, I would say Russia is being incredibly restrained by not targeting some of these areas closer to the border, at least these border crossings, where these NATO assets could be deployed into Ukraine. What I mean by NATO assets, I mean the equipment that NATO is providing Ukraine. So again, it would be within the right of the Russian Federation, given this is an active war zone, to protect itself from ongoing shipments by the West into Ukraine. So, and again, my whole philosophy in terms of NATO support has been the intelligence, the active intelligence information that is being handed over to the Ukrainians is probably far, far more valuable than many of the weapon systems being provided. Obviously, the Javelin and the Star Streak and the Stingers and also the In-Law, very, very capable system, is having an effect on the battlefield. But more importantly, this intelligence, by telling the Ukrainians, hey, you have multiple Russian aircraft inbound towards this locale, or you have a Russian tank column or Russian motorized infantry battalion tactical group on the move at this locale, and give an accurate grid reference on where that's taking place, so that the Ukrainians can launch artillery attacks and long range missile attacks. That is far more effective than a lot of these supplies, some of these weapon systems that are being delivered to the Ukraine, and obviously the ammunition as well. I understand that the Russians have destroyed a lot of the Ukrainian military industry. Well, if the Ukrainians are still receiving ammunition and supplies from across the Polish border, across the Romanian border, then it's really kind of a moot point if the Ukrainian national military industrial complex has been damaged, because again the Ukrainians are still getting weapon systems from the West, and again this kind of eventually could lead to that escalation. And again, I would say a lot of this depends on the success of what happens in the southeast. Obviously, for the Russians to come to the table in a position of strength, it's going to have to push deeper into Ukraine. It's going to have to take control of a lot of this territory in the eastern bank of the Dnieper River, again, that runs along this area where my cursor is pointing. But that's kind of where the war sits today. Again, very important to see that the Russian forces have backed out of these areas and are now probably redeploying a lot of those forces. At the same time, they're probably letting those forces rest a bit and reconstitute some of those forces that were in some very, very tenacious fights northwest and northeast of Kiev. And obviously, the ability to kind of hit the pause button, reconstruct some of those units, and get them back up to combat proficiency is going to be very, very important for the Russians. Obviously, they've taken losses. So has the Ukrainian military. Ukrainian military has probably taken equal, if not more, losses than the Russian Federation in this ongoing conflict. But right now, all eyes, again, I would say right now, are on the areas from Kharkiv all the way down to Donetsk, in the specifically the area of operations looking in terms of the Russian forces to take Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, in these areas in the kind of the Near East environments closest to the separatist areas. But we'll continue to watch and monitor the situation, and obviously have continued reports tomorrow and quite possibly later today. Appreciate everyone viewing. Have a great day.